All right. It's it's the future. We're in the future today. How are you doing, buddy?
I am doing good. The
All right.
future is now.
The future is now. And yeah, it wasn't a heck of a new year just only a couple days ago. How was your New Year's celebration? How did you bring in the new year?
I am a parent who's been married for almost 20 years. I haven't made midnight in a while, so it's fine. We
Uh,
just we
yeah.
we hang out. We do, usually it's around 10. It's like it would screw up our sleep cycle too much, so it's just time to go to bed.
Yes, you're correct because I do have the screwed up sleep cycle. I was telling you before the show. Me and the girlfriend, we went to downtown Toronto. We got invited to one of these big parties out there where everybody only knows like 10% of the guests, that type of size thing. So I was there for celebration and networking, and my girlfriend got very drunk after we rung in the new year, and I had fun having her introduce herself and as various characters and people with me by my side, embarrassing her because I told her I'd do that if she drank too much, and yeah, she's like, "I'm not getting drunk this year." It's like, okay, well, you don't have to. She's just kept on going. So yeah, I was up till we got home like 7 in the morning, and then I stayed up a few hours to make sure that she got to bed okay. But now I'm trying to get back into waking up at my normal morning time again. It's a little tricky, but this happens. This used to happen all the time, not but more recently. This is not since the pandemic has this happened before. So I'm taking that as a good sign that normality is much more closer in reach, at least the hour version of it. And yeah, so it was good, and we this is now the first episode of season 2, episode 53, season 2, episode 1. Scripts on Saturdays. We completed a full year. And for those out there listening, this live, and even if it's on the recording, this Monday on this YouTube channel, we'll be going live with some of the year's co-hosts swinging by to discuss the scripts that we remember from last year and review some of the log lines of the scripts that we'll be reviewing this year. So please be sure to check that out. We also started something new on the Patreon, which is all members can now vote whether they would greenlight or pass on the script that we're reading that week. So this is available to everyone, whether you're a free member or a paid member. You can pop on in, you see the log line, and you get to, if you want, you can read the script by just reaching out to me. And because these are publicly available, but again, we try not to make them go too viral here. So I just want to get this out of the way for all the listeners that you can swing on by, take a look at what we're going to be reviewing, and you can vote green light or pass, and then leave your thoughts and comments, and we'll read them out here on the show. It'll be fun to go through. Uh, we want to get more interaction from you guys because the stuff we have right now is wonderful, but we always like to up it up for you always. Excuse me. Still recovering from the New Year's there. All right,
Have,
so
have you ever thought about doing a New Year's party at an IKEA? Because
that could be
I don't,
something. That could be
because
something.
that might have been kind of a nice, fun variation of a certain script.
You
Anyway,
know how many beds would be slept in by the the end of it? Oh boy.
that's true.
Oh, it also give you new creative things to do in that daycare ball pit thing, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's something. But that's it. That's a good point. So let's get right into it, sir. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Lil Chad from Ascendant Art and last season. How you doing, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I am always happy to be on this show. It's one of my favorite not, if it's not my show, it's probably my favorite one to do. Otherwise, don't tell other people. I if it's not one I'm co-hosting on the regular, but because I just really dig being. This is such a unique show where we get to really dive into unwritten, unproduced scripts and give real feedback that I think is hopefully positive and helping these writers out to get a lot of end user feedback that they don't usually get. So this is like one of the best shows I think I'm on, besides on my own.
Uh, well, thank you. I'm very honored by that, and that's one of the goals here. Yeah, it's a niche thing, but it's a fun thing because yeah, we get to discuss these stories, how they're written, choices that are made, what we liked, what we didn't like. It's kind of like instead of reviewing the movie after it's already done, it's in reverse. We are reviewing the script before making the movie, and we'll also have that great opportunity to see in the coming years a couple of the scripts that we've read, which have going into production, and we never know what the next one might be. So that's one of the cool advantages of this show is that anyone listening to it will know more about what's in development or what's trying to be put in development than what the trades are ever going to focus on, because they don't care until the green light is done. But here you guys are like, oh yeah, you read an article about, oh yeah, this movie's being made. Oh wait, Script on Saturdays reviewed that screenplay like last year. I know. Oh, I know the potential that's behind this. It could actually be really, really good. Or I know the potential behind this and how bad it's going to be. It's going to bomb. Like you've got the access here, guys, and that's pretty great to do. So yeah, let's get started. So for this year, we're starting. So last year we started the year on and off and finished it off with essentially a biopic. So it started with Madden, ended with last week's script on the and I just blanked on what it was because that's how memorable. No, we start on Madden, and of course last week we basically ended now my brain's going nuts. My New Year's brain is literally going nuts. I cannot remember. It was oh crap. Our Man in Miami. Oh my gosh. Took me a minute to remember that. That's the baseball stuff. Not again, sports biography. Whew. Not as popular of a guy as John Madden has become, of course, but we started and ended on that. Man, yes, my New Year's brain is really still lingering around today. So, but now we've started on a comedy and wanted to start off with some good laughs. So here we go with that. So this script is from last year's Blacklist called Assembly Required, written by Kevin Yang, and this script finished in 14th place with 20 votes. It's weird. Something's up here. Sorry, I've got some little background technical difficulties. I've never really had that before, but here we go. All right. So
it's okay. It happens to everybody.
It does. Yeah, it's just some catching up to do. I guess my streaming service is trying to say you have to do an update while you're performing live tonight, and that's what's coming in here. But regardless, yes, Assembly Required. Logline is, during a clandestine overnight stay in the Burbank IKEA, 4 friends get caught in a firefight between rival criminal organizations, forcing them to figure out how to save each other and the store they love so much. So, Lil Chat, please regale us with the synopsis of this week's script.
Here's the synopsis. Barry and Lisa, along with their quirky pals Saul and Keith, decide to relive their youth by sneaking into their local IKEA for a nostalgic sleepover. However, their night turns unexpectedly wild when they stumble upon a secret criminal operation within the store's walls. As they navigate through a labyrinth of furniture and foes, their friendship and survival skills are put to the test. Will they manage to escape before morning, or will they become permanent fixtures in the as-is section? And right off the bat, I'm going to say that this synopsis is probably the most accurate synopsis of all the scripts I've done on this show with you.
Yes, it is. This one really kind of nails a lot of it. And Yeah, I mean, I found I actually this one, the reason why this one is probably the most accurate is that myself and another writer actually worked on this one, because most of the synopses that we find that I find on these scripts are actually like nothing, and some of them are actually the log lines. And you got to switch them out and then write some manually. But this one here, I decided no, I'm going to go a little more detailed, and I want to say a shout out to my friend who knows who he is. Thank you so much. He doesn't want to be named, but I'm gonna respect his participation for that one. So, little Chad.
Yep.
Initial thoughts for this one. Let's start with like concept first, and then get into the nitty gritty.
So the initial thought I have is this dude, the writer, Kevin Yang here, if he is not already doing copy for IKEA's catalog, should immediately be hired, because this guy loves himself IKEA in a way that is not average. And so if they want, if they want a writer who has passion for their product, they should be calling this guy, because he could probably definitely punch up their descriptions for their products 100%.
Yeah, I think so as well, because it's not even just IKEA. The guy's got some chops when it comes to like other retailers in the furniture space, because he does mention other stores as well.
Yeah.
And how they I guess how they do their thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, this writer clearly has a love and knowledge of IKEA that would either be he's either spent too much time there as a shopper, or worked there for a number of years and it's just as either a part-time job or a full-time job while writing on the side. I don't know, but
I feel like he has to just be a shopper, because the never meet your heroes thing.
mm-hmm.
I don't think that if he actually worked at IKEA, because I had friends who worked at IKEA for years, they did not have a passion for IKEA by the end. So you kind of get jaded. I grew up around one of the like first, because IKEA is not a chain with stores everywhere.
Right.
So the IKEA that I was near in Virginia was like the only IKEA within 300 plus miles. So it was a destination. So I have seen people who genuinely have especially this was before you could order stuff online, when you actually had to drive 200 miles and or borrow your friend's pickup to buy all that IKEA furniture. I had IKEA furniture growing up when it was like a new thing in the US. And man, I know we take it for granted now, but I blame IKEA for that slotted bed system, which is now everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they were one of the ones who first brought that into vogue.
Because that's where like you replace the box spring with just the slats, right, in the frame.
Yep, with the slats. Yep.
Yeah, I hate those. Because
and that was like an IKEA thing that was one of the way the furniture was lighter, cheaper, and easier to do it yourself assemble. I also blame IKEA for the whole idea of having to put furniture together myself now. So,
yeah, you can't just buy it and then just carry it in. It's like, well, what happens if you have to get around a corner? Wouldn't you prefer to take it apart and then rebuild it again? Yeah, I mean, I grew up. We didn't have an IKEA nearby, so if we went to one, it was just like you. It was an event, so to speak. But I got really good at putting together IKEA furniture because I had years of practice building Lego sets as a child. So it's just a larger Lego set essentially. So and it's what's funny is that even for whenever my parents would get involved, they would always try to assist me in putting it together, but they learned pretty quick that even if it's a 2 or 3 person thing, I could do it better and more efficiently myself than working with another person, because I just follow the instructions. They're like, well, what does this do? It's like, I don't know, we're not there yet. So yeah, this
slot A and the tab C.
Yeah, slot A and the tab C. You have like screw D with nut not D. Uh, you have your finishing nails for the backings of your bookcases or something. Yeah, it's a lot of craziness there. Um, so yeah, like I was in the same boat. Like this guy really, he does the one thing that I like to preach, which I give him very good props for. It's like write what you know and know what you write. I was very convinced that this guy knew uh, more about IKEA than I ever would. Even with like if I tried to actually start researching it proper, it would probably take me maybe a week or two to catch up to where he is. And I will say this: this stays on to the point of that. But I liked how they did the opening because they focus on the two main characters, which is Barry and Lisa, as children, just for a brief moment. Like they don't really say anything. There's not real much dialogue. It's all kind of done as like I think the writer is trying to replicate that type of meet cute that you saw in Up, the Pixar film, where the one girl fancies the boy who isn't in touch with his romantic side yet, and it ends up sparking a relationship of friendship that turns into romance as they get older, and then we jump to when we jump to them as adults. But before we get to that, like I kind of want to throw it to you because I think you could describe this with quite good humor.
Yeah, because what you didn't see in Up was them. I think Ellie, right, was the name of the girl from Up, and you didn't introduce her to the viewing audience as a complete psychopath.
Right.
So so our introduction to Lisa, who we're meeting at, I guess, elementary school age.
Yeah,
Like from what the script says,
sub 11, I think is what.
Yeah, sub 11 is our boy Barry, who's ostensibly the male lead, but in the sense that this movie is really more of an ensemble, and even though Barry and Lisa are technically the two leads, there's large segments where they're not actually the leading characters.
Yeah.
So Barry and Lisa were introduced to them as children. Barry's getting dropped off into the kid daycare of IKEA, and he makes eye contact with Lisa, and it's supposed to be little kid love at first sight. And then a bully comes up and starts making fun of him, and then Lisa, this is our first words we hear from her, I guess. She sprints over, tackles the bully, and is described as ripping his hair out of his head, which I don't, and I talked to you before we started the show, like I don't know if people think about when they're writing something like that, the amount of violent force you need to use to actually like rip to scalp effectively the person you're assaulting. She does it with glee, and basically then does her manic pixie dream girl moment where she grabs his hand, and then we go into a whimsical fun montage of good times at IKEA as they're being chased down by security.
Yes, they're hiding in the display sets and everything, and it's quite a contrast. It's like, oh, this child just violently assaulted another kid, and in a pretty extreme manner. Not like a smacking him around or a quick tackle and then get up and run. It's more like, nope, gets on top of him, rips out his hair, starts smacking him in the face. Security gets involved and has to separate them, and then she grabs Barry, and the two run through the maze of IKEA with the employees, which are called co-workers in this script. And apparently this is a real thing. Everyone's called a co-worker.
It's a throwback to like the mid 2010s and early 2010s, where I use the term manic pixie dream girl because that's that went around, and that kind of describe where we've completely switched masculine and feminine roles, where she is the white knight to the princess that was Barry being like captured. grabs him by the hand and leads him to freedom and joy. It's like
Yeah, it's
after
supposed to be like
physically assaulting
it's
him.
like the tomboy or the rebel girl that that incites interest by the main lead. Um, what I call it is like it's kind of a misunderstanding of what I like to call as the firecracker character. So the firecracker is just someone who they go against the grain, but that's just because they have a strong personality. They're not necessarily like the domineering person in the room. Nor are they the counterculture person. They're just the one that while they're there with everybody, all of a sudden it's like, oh, she does this, huh? Okay. Or she's gonna go a little bit on her own and do her own thing. She's not trying to get people to follow her. She's got her own stuff, but she's very acceptable of when she's being, courted by the male lead, and then
Yeah,
she's gonna have fun making it not easy for them, but knows that it's gonna happen. Yeah,
and that's a good point. Like, because usually what you'll do in that kind of story is the girl, over the course of the courtship, lets out her feminine side and is vulnerable with the male lead, and that is what leads to the audience accepting their romance and love. Is the fact that, oh, look, this girl who's such a rebel and so independent is capable of being vulnerable and being, you know, romantic and open to the male and taking on again a more traditional feminine role.
yep,
And because it actually becomes more meaningful because as a character that's not generally how she presents to the world, so she must genuinely love this person or feel safe and secure with this person to show that other side.
yeah.
The problem in
Yep.
this script is Lisa and Barry don't really ever have that kind of situation.
Or depth. I mean, the other part
No.
that you're doing is it's also known as like the relationship test, right? So some women will have a certain behaviors that they do to see how, if this guy is actually interested in them genuinely or just interested in them superficially, and they put on that behavior, and if you pass that test, that armor comes down, and that's when the fun actually starts to really, really begin. And then there's other people who they quote the Marilyn Monroe thing, which is, if you can't stand me at my worst, you don't deserve me at your best. And it's like, well, I know a lot of women who they'll never show their best because they're constantly living at their worst. And the same is also for men. So it's like, that's not really the best metric to have.
And the way, and in this script, the way they, since we're introduced to them at elementary school age, at this moment where basically they set up that they're in love from when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then we flash forward to when they're right around 30 years old, because they make a point in the script of showing that she's getting emails about her upcoming 30th birthday.
Yeah, she's dreading it.
And the I guess the conflict between the two of them is Barry getting ready to propose and her not, feeling great about the relationship. But like, realistically, they've now been together 20 years.
Yes. They've been together 20 years, and yet I don't like this part. Like, the way we're introduced to them is they're kind of arguing over building IKEA furniture through a TikTok video, which I'm like, yes, this is a good premise to get to help us get to know these characters. And yet the scene itself was kind of felt more like just a general argument in trying to build IKEA furniture, as opposed to, in a story, you want to have the subtext being is like, well, Barry is supposed to be very cautious and very meticulous and step by step, and Lisa's supposed to be a bit more fluid and instinctual. We should be seeing that clash so we understand where they are in their relationship, but instead it's more like, I'm just frustrated, I can't find this thing. Well, this is what it's supposed to be. Well, it's too matter of fact. I found.
I mean, the writer was going for, look, in this little segment of the script where I flash forward, I'm establishing through actions that he's a by the book, guy, and she's a free spirit. And I was like, well, you already did that when they were kids. We're rehashing the same thing.
And there's nothing else in depth going on here yet.
And I think and the whole problem with their relation, like if you wanted to have a conflict, it's weird that they've been together that long. They've been living together since college,
Hmm.
which means that they've been living together
About a
roughly
decade.
at least 10 years.
Yeah.
They're clearly, I mean, the script makes a point, they have a scene. They're clearly have engaged routinely in activities to the point where the Lisa feels the need to try to spice it up because it's so old hat. You know, it's they if they were going to do this, if the writer wanted to make conflict with, he should have not had them together yet, where they've been friends for 20 years,
Hmm.
but not at, but she's a wild free spirit. They never dated, and over the course of the script is him finding his masculine, voice and I don't want to say, but taking her, like
Yeah.
I like
Swooning,
whisking her off her
sweeping her off
feet,
her
like
feet. Yeah.
make yeah, sweeping her off her feet, like doing it like my wife reads romance novels. This is 99% of romance novels. Is the guy through his strong, will, that
Conquers
read,
over the
yeah,
yes, conquers over the
yeah.
lady with her full cooperation and desires being met.
Exactly. Like, I hate to break it to a lot of these writers who think this is how it has to go because it's 2025. Wow, said it 2025 because it's 2025. But go read romance novels whose readership is 99% women.
Yes.
Read what they want to see as a romance. Understand this is what they like as a not every single person, but as a
Hmm.
general population, this is what females are inclined to enjoy, and understand that it's not just a beta male being led around by a leash. It's they want Cal Drogo. They want a male who's masculine, who, basically woos them and overcomes their barriers to take the lead. And this guy is not that. And if they want it, that's one way to shift it. Like, because giving them a relationship where they've been dating and in love and done all the check marks, including living together for a decade, completely makes it nonsensical for me to see conflict when it comes to, like, I'm gonna propose and she may not like it. Like, dude, if you've been with her for that long and you've been living together for 10 years and you don't know that she's gonna say yes, so you have to do some crazy elaborate proposal scheme, your relationship is not one that should continue.
Yeah, there's a severe lack of communication going on here. And I wish that's what this scene was a bit more about, because it would make sense if, I mean, again, it's literally written as like, I can't see anything in the photos. I think they're clear. Obviously, they aren't if we're having this conversation. It's like, this is the normal thing that you would hear in an IKEA about two people who work there trying to put together one of the new displays. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's a
Yeah.
romantic. It doesn't feel like it's a couple that have been together for a long time. Like, it's missing this one rule, which is that every character's line should factor into the motivation of what they want. So from the get-go here, it would be nicer if there's a little bit more strength on Barry's lines, where everything he's saying is motivated by the fact that he is planning to propose to her, and Lisa is motivated by the fact that maybe she just can't see a committed future. Like, she likes the casualness that she has, like the level that they're at now. This is what she likes, maybe, or maybe she's afraid of that. I don't know, because I couldn't, even though there are parts of the script that I quite enjoyed, I do struggle with regards to Barry and Lisa figuring out what it is they truly want. I mean, I understand that Barry's plan is to propose, but I don't see why he wants to propose to her. This feels like a relationship that's built more on comfort than it is on actual, like, interest and love and what it means to be in love. And I think that's kind of like its weaker part. But we also get introduced to the other character here, a guy named Saul, who is a social media influencer of sorts, and he's got some diehard fans that definitely follow him a lot, which is cool for him. And and he is a vibe free spirit. He's kind of like Lisa in the sense, like, very fluid. with goals and motivations. Like with Lisa, we know that she's a free spirit and she's aggressive and a little bit of a borderline psychopath, but we don't know, like, we don't really know much about her as an adult. And same thing for Bill. Like he's an electrician of sorts, we think, and then Lisa works in some sort of industry. Like we don't really get a sense of their character and what they do for a living, or anything like that. But Saul Orko, we're like, oh yeah, this is the guy who he makes TikTok videos on social media, gets a following, gets monetized, all that type of stuff. He makes these shorts, and his first critique is, of course, saying, hey guys, we're trying to make a TikTok that is, TikTok length. This is going to take hours, which I think is ironic because assembling IKEA furniture is not something you can do in a few minutes. So a TikTok about it is, it's like, oh, okay, you got the abridged version of assembling furniture. And yeah, I mean, this is a bit more of a plot scene, because they bring in the Besta TV storage combination unit, which is apparently a very difficult piece of IKEA furniture to assemble. One of the more frustrating ones. It's actually pictured in the thumbnail here. It's a floating cabinet, so it's completely mounted to the wall. And if it's not done properly, it will collapse in on itself and maybe break a toe or two if you're standing nearby.
I'm having a little audio issue.
We're having audio here? Oh, sorry. Let's see.
My computer might have been down. I think it did an update.
Oh, but you're coming through loud and clear now, so you're good.
Give me just some.
Oh, no,
all right, cool.
It happens, right? Like I had an update trying to talk about last week's show. You have an update right now, so clearly Microsoft is striking while the iron is hot, so to speak. Yeah. So
exactly.
So basically, yeah, we've now introduced our next character. Now Saul is, I guess
Saul is Hollywood from Mannequin.
Yeah, Saul is Hollywood from Mannequin. So I'll throw it to you on that part there. Saul is Hollywood Mannequin, and then I'll follow up with a couple of interesting points about him as well.
Yeah, Saul is supposed to be one of our high-end TikTok creative types who's constantly being inspired. And if he's not being inspired, he's just not interested.
Yeah.
Which is why when I was reading the script, what I flashed back to was Mannequin from the 1980s, where Hollywood was exactly like that.
Yeah, he does have some similarities to him. He's got this drive. He's not much of a perfectionist, but he's kind of like the only guy that has these like short-term goals ahead of him. And also he has some like, well, I was hoping you'd have more stories, but he only has the one story, which is like his heart was broken by Tom Hanks' third son, Truman Hanks, which I oddly enough never heard of before.
I didn't understand that reference at all.
Yeah, I part of me is wondering, like, is it really a third son, or is it a guy who lied to him about being related to Tom Hanks? But I mean, he is actually Tom Hanks's other kid, who no one really knows as of yet. But that's another. And
there's no other reference in the script to give you an idea what that even meant.
No, like the closest I was able to infer from it is that Saul is a gay man. Oddly enough, that's not really at the forefront of his character. Right now, his stuff is just about filming TikTok videos and getting them out there for popularity reasons. And he does have, however, an attraction to another character who is introduced on the next page, named Keith Wen, who is essentially Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, but instead of him loving science and science fiction, he's passionate about IKEA. And yeah,
he is like super autistic about it.
Yeah,
he's Sheldon with trains. Is Keith with IKEA?
Yeah, exactly. And he's actually in the other room having just repaired another piece of IKEA furniture that I guess was not assembled correctly, and his achievement of this garners cheers from Lisa, Saul, and Barry, and this is now their this is now us introduced to the group, which is within the first 10 pages, and it's done quite efficiently. I mean, each one kind of gets, we get Saul has his little moment with, you know, Truman Hanks and what he's trying to do with TikTok, and then we get Keith's moment as well afterwards with like, yep, I just fixed the bedroom piece, the eket or whatever it is, and we kind of get a little bit of a moment of,
My God,
them.
the names of the IKEA furniture.
Yeah, they're thrown about. Only the first one.
I can't keep up.
Only the best of TV storage combination unit is actually described as fully what it is. The rest, they just say the words. And as I was reading this, it reminded me of like, this is that running gag in all the Deadpool movies of the IKEA furniture stuff between Deadpool and Blind Al, and it's just kind of taken to the nth degree with the references of all the various furniture, which, you know, when you set it in a Burbank IKEA, an IKEA that I've been in a few times, yeah, you kind of have to lean into that. But I would have preferred a little bit more on the description side of things, as opposed to just the Flurgen and whatnot that is thrown around, because sometimes you have to stop and you're like, oh my gosh, wait, what is that? And you mentioned before the show that this is probably one of the few scripts with an exception it could use. And what would that exception be, little Chad?
I don't even. I mean,
like throwing in little pictures with the.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was my suggestion. Was this was the one time a script would have benefited from actually having photos from the IKEA catalog. You could put them in there, because this writer doesn't follow the rule of like giving you the full description, like the Gerpelhot bookcase,
Yeah.
and then calling a Gerpelhot, you know, through in the future.
No, exactly. It's a little bit. It throws you off a little bit, but after we get this quick establishment, what we kind of see is that we're like this has a kind of a rough start of a script, because even though the characters get their moments to sort of define themselves of sorts, the main characters, the romantic love interest characters, are the ones that are the weakest of the bunch. Like, I understand who Saul is, and I know that he has an attraction to Keith. Keith is, as we already said, the Sheldon guy, but there's no indication that he even registers romance with Saul. And so you got that little part here. And then after that, we find out that, yeah, Lisa is getting a little concerned that her 30th birthday is approaching. The script has this one little thing that I think it didn't do quite well, and that is they use in the action line, they say, oh, it's been 3 or 4 months since Lisa's spoken to her mom. Or 2 months ago, sorry, since Lisa's spoken to her mom. You have to show us that. You can't just tell us that in the action description. Like, we need like a calendar month. Like, oh, it's what are we going to do for, you know, 4th of July next week, you know, so we know that we're in June. And then, you know, Lisa goes onto her phone and she sees the last message from her mom is in February. We can understand from those two cues that they haven't talked in a while. And instead, the screenplay just says, yes, this is the last message. It's been 2 months ago. Like, that means nothing. You have to give us some indication to show us that as if it were an actual movie. You can't just tell us on the page, which was the first kind of faux pas I caught. But right after we get into that, we kind of get into, we kind of follow Keith a little bit more at work, at IKEA, where he meets his team, and he's got his supervisor named Aquila, who she's like this very boisterous, showy type of woman. who's taking the heads of I guess IKEA around the Burbank store, talking about how she's integrated this new system that pretty much fires in-person security personnel for the night shift, and then just automates it with the computer system. So
I'll be honest, that actually was like the one of the smartest things that the script did was the framing of the setup for the night security system and why the store would be accessible,
but also 100% empty. Like nothing to worry about, and it ties into the current day modernization of things, which is like, oh, correct, we have this self checkout now, so now we have these self security.
Yeah, this was this in terms of the way the script set things up for the future movie plot. This was the smartest thing they did.
Yeah,
because it worked to the best. It was completely organic. It seems super in keeping with 2025 that executives would be looking for automation and downsizing, like you mentioned. It didn't seem out of place. It gave you the Chekhov's gun of why Keith would be able to do the turning it off later, because she mentions, oh, the system is designed so only myself and store managers can bypass it.
Yes.
Because they did ask a question of like, what happens if we need to bypass it, which is a good question to ask, right? It's a security system. Who has permissions? And so it gives all the information in an organic, natural way that comes back as important points later. I liked in terms of all the stuff the script did, this one actually seemed the most intelligently written from a story perspective, but still serving the story.
Yeah, yes, and this is where I started realizing that I think the conflict that the writer is having with the screenplay is that the more interesting story is Keith and the IKEA stuff, and the Barry and Lisa thing just does not. It feels more like an afterthought, at least in execution wise. Because this
honestly, Keith has the most legitimate story arc from start to finish. He has the most growth, even though his character doesn't. I mean, it's weird to. When you got someone who's written to be like super emotionless autistic, you don't get, but his character does have the most growth from the beginning to the end in terms of, where he was at versus where he was at the end of the story. I think you're right. I think this story started as a Keith is the main character story, and he added on because he wanted to make it more, I guess, commercial, the romance element, or he started with the romance story and as a writer got completely bored of that and just started finding himself attracted to writing scenes more for Keith and what was going on with him.
Yeah, because Keith is the more interesting one. He's got the encyclopedic knowledge of IKEA, how it functions, how it works. He's dealing with two of his employees. One of them is named Elsa, who is a Swedish girl who she admires Keith for how his knowledge and efficiency with operating things at IKEA and how he follows the rule book to a T. And then we get introduced to another employee named Rishi who doesn't care. He's just, you can tell he's there because it's just a job for him. And
come to think of it, now that we're talking about this, if I was, because it was Kevin Yang is the writer.
Yeah.
I would, word of advice right now, do another draft where you completely write out Lisa and Barry. Completely. Yes. Just start right up with, maybe do, don't even do a flashback to when he was a kid. Just go right into the TikTok scene where it's Saul as the TikTok, the IKEA TikToker with Kevin fixing something in the other room. And just go right through the story with that. Completely remove Barry and Lisa. And actually, I think the movie might be much better because clearly he's more interested in Kevin's story.
Oh, exactly. It's the Kramer paradox from Seinfeld, right? Where people love Kramer, and they always Jerry and Larry David were like, yeah, we like writing him too, but we can't write him all the time because it's going to come at the expense of the other characters. We have to start beefing up the other characters so that they're on the level of Kramer, and so that they don't oversaturate them. This one here, when you're dealing with a movie script, you can actually go in that direction because it's the one central story. It's not back over and over and over again with the same type of gimmick. For this part here, it's like, yeah, what if Barry and Lisa, I mean, sorry to say, were written out of the story, and you just focus it on Keith and Saul, and Saul is there. He's like, hey, well, I do TikTok videos on IKEA and for social media, and you're my friend, Keith, so I'm going to videotape you fixing up the stuff that's in the as is section, so that it's like, hey, maybe as is, but it's almost as good as new. That's the gimmick, right? And that's why they have their friendship. And then we get the dynamics of the store. We have Keith's manager who is downsizing security for IKEA, and then you've got the employees that Keith has to navigate with. And then one of the things I picked up on this thing, and I thought it was done quite tactfully, is Keith's attention to detail ignites a spark with Elsa when she's introduced. Like, you get that romantic tension here, and she's a bit more aggressive with it compared to Saul. And I'm like, well, there's your good dynamic, right? There's your love triangle of sorts, like a proper love triangle, not like a Superman and Lois Lane love triangle where it's really just two people, in love with each other. One where like you have three parties and two of which are at odds over the object of their affection. And in this case here, it's Keith. And I thought that was kind of a cool dynamic, and also interesting because it's like, oh, well, where could this go? It's like, hey, you've got manager dating an employee. I don't know if that's going to work because Keith is such a stickler for the rules. That might be something that's frowned upon or stipulated in human resources that you cannot do. So that could be an interesting conflict to explore. Now, this script doesn't get to that point yet because, as you mentioned, little Chad, this really well done setup of Aquila showcasing this new experiment of securing IKEA after hours with little to almost zero costs and labor is exactly what sets us up for this movie. But it also rolls into what Barry is trying to do, which is we come back to Barry when he's sitting in the passenger seat while Lisa is driving them, I guess, to work or something, and he's FaceTiming with his parents, and they're talking about, hey, yeah, your 401k is getting upped, so you're going to be retiring at 60, and can
I just talk to you about
the
math of that? He said they were upping the match to 5%.
Yes.
Which, all right, understand, most traditional in the United States, most traditional 401ks offered by a business have 5% matching already. What they usually do is they match dollar for dollar the first 4%, and then to get to 5%, you actually have to do 6% because it's half. Anyway.
Yeah.
So you have to put at least 6% of your salary in to get a 5% match. That is not extraordinary 401k matching. That is not I don't, like he said, I should be on pace to retire at 60. This dude must be living well in whatever he's doing because he's 30. And if he's thinking because he's now getting a 5% match that he would be able to retire at 60, I have no clue how that would financially work, because in the United States, if you're under the age of 55, the most you can put in legally per year, and they just increased it in 2025 to $23,500. So over the course of 30 years, say he started, actually say 20 years.
Yep.
That would be $470,000. If he was getting a 5% match per year, I work in finance, so bear with me. That'd be $1,100 more. So 23,500 plus 1,175 times 25 years, he'd have 616,000. Assuming a decent rate of return, he's probably looking, if the stock market doesn't have a big dip at any point in that time, of maybe at best like $1 million in retirement savings.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, script, but if you retire at 60, that $1 million isn't going to last you.
It's not unless you're going to die at 65.
Yeah.
And remember, they're also in California. They're in Burbank at this point. Like, there's no way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if he lived another 20 years, people, that would be the equivalent of making 50 grand a year for 20 years. And
Yeah.
then all of the money would be gone, all of it. And
Yep.
that's before taxes. You pay taxes on 401ks. So, no, he is not retiring at 60.
No.
Yeah, because he's suddenly got a 5% match on his 401k. Unless, again, I don't know all the I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know what this writer was projecting in his head for how much these people were making as a couple that was not married, by the way,
Yep.
living in an apartment with no tangible assets except IKEA
Yeah,
furniture. So, there's the part where, like, the thing that can take you out of suspension of disbelief is when when a writer writes something that you're intimately aware of. And doing finance, as soon as I read that, I was like, what the F?
Well,
No.
again, it comes down to, again, write what you know and know what you're right. Don't bring up something like that if you don't really know, or you haven't run the numbers properly. Like, he's basically saying he's going to retire with $1 million at the age of 60, essentially. And then it's like, well, okay, we also have to assume that's including what he normally puts away as savings. But still, like, that's not always going to work out.
So this is a side tangent, but from again working in finance, one of the things that comes up is most people don't understand there is a yearly cap on your 401k contributions because it's so at 23,000 is not a small number.
No.
No average person is putting 23 grand. High earners are, like doctors, lawyers, like really high earners.
Right.
In fact, the IRS has special rules for businesses that if high earners are going to be putting that much away, the lower level employees have to get guaranteed money from the business outside of contribution matching. But that's a whole other subject. Point being, most people never are not putting away enough to even know there's a limit on 401k. So my guess is this guy who's writing the script, Mr. Kevin Yang, and this isn't your fault, man, because I hear it all day long when I have to help people with this question. Don't know that you actually have a cap on what you can put in 401k. So they probably think it's unlimited. And so therefore this guy could put away 50 grand of his income a year, 60 grand, like where you start really putting numbers where it could conceivably take, like you into retirement at age 60.
Yes.
But that's, so he's probably, again, like you said, he probably never bothered even doing the Google search about IRS yearly limits 401k contribution.
No, he probably didn't. But I will say this: he put in tons of research when it comes to IKEA, and I'm like, damn, that's. I mean, he slipped up here. Like this, let's. I mean, you don't even. This part of the conversation doesn't even matter at this point.
Nope,
because
it was unnecessary.
It's supposed to give him character that he's trying to be prepared, but it just doesn't hold up because it doesn't. Him being prepared or his preparedness. Even at the very end, barely really comes into play at all. Like he just doesn't. The writers doesn't run with it for Barry, but
yeah, it really just reinforces that Barry and Lisa are the weakest links in this ensemble, even though they're supposed to be the leads. And I've now come to the conclusion they just need to be written out of the script. Because it would flow. Yeah. You could still pretty much do the same movie.
You could. The only difference would be you'd have to just find because well actually let's get into it right now because we're not even out of the first act yet, ladies and gentlemen. Like this, there's lots to talk about of this script because there's a lot of interesting things here. There's substance to it, but what we end up learning is that Barry and Keith, as they talk, Keith, says, yeah, the new system's in place. Nobody's going to be in the IKEA anymore. And Barry's like, well, this is perfect for my opportunity. I've been planning this for months based on this premises. I want to have a sleepover at IKEA, which is silly of itself, so that he can propose to Lisa in the as-is section just as because that's where it all started. Like, he wants to propose where the relationship started and going all the way back to where they're kids. He thinks it's a huge romantic gesture. And you're like, oh, okay, I understand the concept of that. It's still odd, but I'll roll with it. And what I thought was more telling about this conversation is that Keith was far more reluctant to want to do this for his friend, because he has such a devout loyalty to the company of IKEA, which, again, funny.
And it makes sense because he's the only one who would be facing real consequences by that choice. Like they've in the script we've learned that he started out as just a rank and file grunt IKEA employee, and has now worked his way up to being a store manager. And I would imagine, honestly, that store manager at IKEA is probably a fairly well-paying position.
I would hope so, given how big of a company they are. Yeah.
I mean, this is also in California. I would think like store manager I can say IKEAs do business. They do bank, right? Like so again, at least before everything was online, but even so people like with furniture more than a lot of things like to go and see it before they would buy it.
Yeah.
So point being, he's probably pulling like six figures as an IKEA manager now.
One would hope. I mean, especially with the wage laws that are in California, he should be getting close to that.
I mean, a store manager, I would imagine, is getting close to between 120 and 150, depending on profit sharing, bonuses, options, and whatever.
At a company of that size, and also because the Burbank IKEA is the largest in the United States, like that comes with a certain level of prestige.
That's like that would be like a flagship. He's basically Captain Kirk.
Yes,
he's the captain of the flagship of the fleet, and you're asking him. Kirk's a bad idea. He breaks the rules all the time. But you're asking
the
John
position
Picard,
is appropriate. Yes.
Yeah, you're asking this guy to break the big, like, to risk his job, to risk everything for shenanigans, like, which is for goofing off. Real. I mean, obviously it's his friends and Captain Kia. I see in the chat. Yeah, that's
Captain Kia.
Yeah. But now it's interesting because you can tell from Keith's personality and the way they showed him interacting with other coworkers that he's clearly he doesn't have a lot of friends, and so it's very personal. Like, it would be very important for him for the friendships he has, and that gets referenced later in the script, right? That he doesn't have many friends, so that's why he would do these things for them.
Yes, and I mean, I like the fact that Keith. The only time we see Keith nervous is when he's trying to reject Barry's request to do this, and then Barry just gives him this nice little speech saying like how he needs this and Lisa needs this, and he wants to show or improve that he's still in love with her. And I'm like, you know what? And prove that they should be together. And I'm like, this monologue would be great if I felt like these two, with regards to the relationship, was on the rocks or needed something, because. We did skip over this.
If they were never together and this was his grand romantic gesture to get her. Like,
there's that, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in love with her for 20 years. He's like, I need this because this is the only way I can probably let her know that I do. And if he's been with them for 10 plus years as their friend, he may have been on board with them, like it's something out of Friends. Like, he knows that Ross loves Rachel, so he's okay with it.
Sure, yeah, exactly. And we skipped over this a little bit, but before we get to this point, she's trying to be a little spicy in the bedroom by spanking him with an IKEA spatula or something, and he doesn't go for it. And I felt like, well, that's a little bit too easy to relate to, with regards to like, oh, she wants to spice things up the bedroom with a little S&M or dominatrix. Sorry. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can understand that. It's kind of an out of left field thing, but by
the way, it's still interesting that she's the one
initiating
spanking him.
Yeah.
And then bear in mind, poor IKEA. I think this is the one place where they might start getting gun shy about their product placement when she starts making comments about what they're going to do to that chair.
I don't know. They are Netherlands people. They like their sex.
Yes, where she's using the exact product name once again, and it was like, we're gonna do this and that to this chair, to this that. And I'm like, okay, IKEA might be like, that needs to go.
Yeah, they might, or someone in the United States representing IKEA would probably say that won't play well in the United States, and IKEA would be like, well, it's on brand. Our furniture can withstand such action.
I do remember in the 90s when IKEA was doing their commercials to get really big,
Yeah.
and they did the one where it was like the cow coffee creamer,
Oh,
and it falls off the like table and breaks, and it cuts to like the IKEA like Dutch, and he's like, "You feel sorry for the creamer? It was ugly and had to go." It was just like it was such a European thing, and
yeah.
it was such a nonsensical commercial. Like the IKEA stuff, like back in the 90s when we just did funny ads, and it stuck with me. But it's yeah, this couple's just poorly written all the way around, and their bad relationship infects the interactions with the other characters so that it is not so good with them. Like,
Yeah, so I'm just gonna finish the Barry and Lisa's thing at this point. So there's a bunch of cross signals with the characters. There's this poorly executed aspect of Barry not knowing that Barry trying to be romantic and getting a proposal that is memorable versus the fact that Lisa is still very much into him, even though they have an arguments here and there. It feels like their communication is crossed, where he's like, because he's implying that there's doubts that this is not going to work and that his relationship's going to end, and yet in the previous time where they're together, the only thing that Lisa's worried about is turning 30, but she's still ready to jump the bones of Barry. So I'm lost with the dynamic of what's going on with this relationship. But that being said, let's get on to more of the action oriented stuff, the heist stuff.
Yeah,
so
so we meet Hans now, right?
Yes, the Swedish criminal with his crew of fellow Swedes.
With his Disney style pet frog that he uses.
his poisonous pet frog.
Which is called Miss what was it, like Miss you something like weird.
Yeah, it's oh gosh, I'm just quickly going through it here. Sorry, it's it's a horned golden poison dart frog. Maja. Her name is Maja.
Maja.
That's
Maja.
So you got Maja the frog, that he uses to poison his enemies,
which he keeps like in his pocket as he's just walking around.
Yeah, which is where one keeps a frog of
which
deadly.
Is as you do,
as one
you
does.
keep your poison frogs as one does.
But yeah, basically, we have this very 80s style aesthetic here where they're on the dock and they're moving in, illegal goods, and there's this one U.S. representative, which is named William Yang, who he's whole here, great to help him, transport illegal goods. We pull out to the very object of everyone's attention, the blue jasmine, which is this very ornate necklace that Hans took and from another criminal enterprise we later discover. And the moment he pulls it out, William sneezes on it and mucus gets everywhere, and that leads to William being killed by the frog. Like Hans just cuts him, takes out the frog, and then flicks the frog onto William's face, where its skin contact will poison you, and if it gets in your bloodstream, it's incredibly quick and very, very painful death. And all because William sneezed on Hans and this very priceless necklace.
Yeah, I mean, I did like Hans as a henchman bad guy name is well established.
Yes,
but it's so over the top, like as an intro. I actually don't mind it because I like my villains to be over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind giving him a signature thing like a poison frog he would keep around to make him a little bit,
memorable. It's a very memorable part. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and then in fact, I would even play it up to have him being like very doting and lovey towards the frog and then, put the frog away and then be very gruff and mean to his henchmen. Like to try to it's even more funny because I think this is clearly supposed to be a whims, like an action comedy, where you're getting comedic beats, So I would play into it a little more to give him something like that where he has like a basically a dynamic that's so situationally off-putting it's humorous.
Yeah,
So
because I was getting vibes of like Last Action Hero, um, with
yeah,
this type of
where
scene,
yeah, like with the guy with the glass eye,
the glass
whatever his name
eye.
was. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, that's what you want to do. I mean, Last Action Hero has aged better and been better received since then. So I think it would be a good spot to
It
look at
was,
that.
yeah, it was definitely ahead of its time. And but this point here, you get that kind of tone of a Last Action Hero type of thing, where or like Lethal Weapon with a little bit of a more of a humorous tilt, where you've got like that mood music, that night type of theme. Like you can picture the docks, you can picture like
Yep.
the foghorn in the background, and then they're all like moving their equipment around, and everybody's like, okay, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. That part is quite captured right well. And then Hans's introduction of like, yeah, I'm killing the first contact I have on stateside because they screwed up. I'm a zero tolerance type of character. I'm like, okay, that's very well defined, and it's defined in basically like a page and a half. Like it's really well done.
Yeah,
Um,
it's weird because our IKEA manager with setting up the security system,
mhm.
very well done. Our introduction to our lead bad guy, well done. Could be, I think it could be played, like I said, more for humor since this is going to be more comedic, but still well done where you get a beat for him. And it also establishes, because he says not just for him sneezing, but also to tie up all loose ends, no witnesses, no other people to track to him,
Mhm.
which again plays to later on once we're in the IKEA, how his crew knows he wants things to be done and setting up some of the first conflicts there. So it's on point, and it sets up very well for what we get later when we have the henchmen chasing down our leads, that
Yes.
they are doing it because they know Hans is a no loose ends, no witnesses boss,
Ooh.
and so they need to get rid of him.
And he's very direct and very precise, which factors into another part, which we'll get to later on. But I also like the fact that one of the henchmen named Tattooed Crew Guy lets Hans knows that here in the States it's really hard to store these illegal goods because the authorities are cracking down on all the typical places that you'd store stuff. And has this cool, it's a very 1980s classic type of action line, which is like always hide where they least expect it. And we do not just have any storage center, we have a fortress. He's really playing it up. And I like the cheese and the ham that come with this type of dialogue for this type of character, because it's not about it's about him trying to look cool by saying some things that are kind of a little bit cliche, but also at the same time a little silly. And I dig that because it's a nice little conflict of tone, but it also complements what the contrast of what's happening. Like, oh, these four ordinary people are now in a diehard situation, or something of that nature. So this is how that's going to clash. Because as soon as we get to that fortress line, we cut to the IKEA cafeteria where our four team are eating the meatballs and mashed potatoes in the restaurant at the IKEA. And the scene is really, I mean, it's a very kind of like washy scene where Lisa's saying like these meatballs are so much better than anything that Italy could make, which is crazy. But but we
As
get the
someone of
sense.
Italian descent, I objected to it on a fundamental level, but
Yes, as one should, Italian or not. But this was more like this was a scene to try and really establish how much Lisa and Barry love IKEA, which I kind of felt like we already got. It just felt like redundant. But aside from the fact that yes, it's now okay, we're reestablishing that these characters love IKEA so much that they go there for lunch, which I'm certain there are people that do that. But then it segues over to the next point, which is we're coming here next weekend to have that sleepover here in IKEA. We're not breaking in, we're sneaking in, and we're going to do it on our own terms, just like how we always imagine and whatnot. And this is the first time where Barry has kind of shown a little bit of ambition, according to like Lisa's reaction, because this is the first time where she's actually saying like, well, we might get caught. And again, like, I keep trying to like wrap it up. Like, I don't want to keep on spending with Barry and Lisa because they sadly are the least interesting. But now we have like a role reversal here where this is the first time we're seeing Lisa conscious of her actions and Barry's the go-getter. And I would appreciate this more if we saw something, if this was part of the establishment of their relationship to begin with. Like, they have two different perspectives on things, and more often than not, Lisa is the one that's the free spirit and Larry is the reserved one. But then every once in a while, Larry is the free spirit and Lisa's got a reserve. But you need to show a context of that, where I would say anything that feels like it's super safe, Barry would be the guy that is like, hey, let's go and do this and whatever, because you could tell that there's no real consequences. And the stuff that's a little bit more dangerous, Lisa wants to do, and Barry wants to pull back. Like, Lisa wants to, speed on the highway. And Barry's like, no, we got to stay under 55. But she's like, well, we're going to be late. It's like, well, I'd rather be late and alive than fast and dead, And then Barry's like, oh, look at this. It's a buffet that we're at. Maybe we could have a little bit more of this sweet. It's like, well, what about your weight? Oh, I can always work it off afterwards. It's a much slower risk to my health than you driving. Like, we don't have that dynamic with these characters. So it just kind of feels like hollow when we have this kind of role reversal of Barry saying, hey, let's do this thing that's kind of dangerous. That's not really dangerous, but it is kind of like, odd. And Lisa's the one that says, yeah, maybe that's not my first instinct to do that. It was just weird. I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought that was just kind of weird. If anything, I would have expected Barry to be like, we're doing the sleepover. She's like, oh my God, you pulled it off. How'd you pull it off? We got to do this. We got to do that. Oh my, we can change some of the displays. And then Keith can be like, whoa, you can't change anything. Like, it should be that type of direction.
Yeah, nothing in the character of Lisa before or really after for a while lends itself to why she was getting so weirded out about doing this, like for that little brief bit, except to add unnatural conflict into their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like, at least for the first 3/4 of the script, and even into the last act, our writer here is unnaturally adding conflict between Lisa and Barry for the sake of having conflict,
as opposed to it being driven by their characters. Yeah,
and it doesn't work. I mean, we've talked about it now that they're the characters that work least. I would say, in terms of characters that work least, like, they're completely unnecessary. I'd put Saul as maybe slightly better than them, but still maybe a lot not so necessary.
Yeah.
And then Kevin's our lead, and he's our Keith.
Yeah,
Keith.
Keith's the lead. He's the guy that
Kevin's the writer, Keith the lead. Keith is our lead, that is really the lead of this movie, and I think he just didn't trust, because Keith is supposed to be, again, emotionless and autistic style, that he didn't trust him to be the lead of a movie that would get greenlit. But I actually think that if you cut Lisa and Barry out and then refine the script around Keith, I would think this is a much more filmable movie because it just flows better that way. Like, I know I don't want it not to, put give it away where I'm thinking on it, but I don't like the Lisa and Barry stuff. Just is a hard not working for me, and it throws it off it makes it hard for me to get into any of the rest of the movie, because they don't work so bad. Like, they're so bad as a couple. I don't want them on the screen.
Yeah, they're poorly defined as a couple, and as a result, there's no real stakes regarding their relationship, right? Like, it's not the loss of potential, because that's not really quite established, as you would get with like a new romance movie, where you have them meet cute and they're excited and they're like, oh, is this going to be the person that you're committed to and going into the future? That's the stakes of a typical romantic comedy. And here we've got a relationship that's 20 plus years strong, and there's a proposal inside, and one of the two is worried that it's not going to go well. It's like, I mean, 2 decades is a commitment that not a lot of people get with the same person, by and large, in this day and age. So yeah, it just doesn't feel like the stakes are there. But on Keith's side of things, it's like, well, he's responsible for the store and the employees, and he loves the store. And we have this dramatic irony, which is that we've got this group of people that are going to exploit the very thing Keith loves, and that could have consequences, not just for what they're going to do when they're in that store, but also for Keith's job that he loves. Like, what happens if on his watch, even though higher management has gotten rid of his security, there's a break-in at IKEA and things are destroyed? Well, he's responsible for that, and that could cost him, his job and the place that he loves to work.
I mean, there's a line later in the script where he refers to IKEA as an oasis of happiness.
Yes.
I mean, this is a guy. This is what we would call a true believer.
Mm-hmm.
He has bought into IKEA as like the gateway to better humanity. I don't see it, but he has a character does. So it gives him more motivation. Like this, all the motivation to be like an unexpected action hero to take down the bad guys is with Keith.
Yes.
All the motivation to to have the unexpected romance that seems to come out of nowhere, but actually was telegraphed early on when you were paying attention, is with Keith.
It's all there.
All the interesting beats of an action comedy are with Keith's character 100%.
Yes, and
he's the lead.
And one of the opportunities that unfortunately was missed here is that the setting of IKEA could also be not just Nakatomi Tower, but it's also Holly McLean at the same time, right? It's not just navigating through IKEA, but it's also trying to protect it and save it from the people. Like, the setting in this case can now be a character with an added element, which is Keith's love for the job and for the philosophy behind IKEA.
I mean, yeah, you've got you're right. IKEA is the damsel in distress for Keith.
Yes.
It's not just like the location of the action. It is what is needing to be saved. You can have beats where like normally the hero is getting upset when he's worried about the love interest and her safety. You've got any moment where Keith could be walking by a display that a thug unnecessarily like broke or destroyed, and have him like getting some rageful looks at what he thinks, like what he's seeing being done to his oasis of happiness.
Yes, exactly.
It's like it's perfect. That's why he is the lead. He is who they should do. Kevin, do a rewrite. Understand, you may not have planned it, but Keith is your Urkel. Starting season 2, he's what everybody's watching. Go back.
Yeah.
You may have thought about Barry and Lisa, and that might be personal to you for some reason. Whatever, I don't know, but it's just not the thing that's doing it. Keith is there. The elements are there for it. This is where I think you've got something workable with Keith. And because of the stuff with him was interesting, with the right actor, with some charisma. I think of Ben Affleck from The Accountant, where he was playing like a supposedly very autistic guy who had trouble navigating relationships, who was also an action hero. We are trained as a society after years to think autistic people have these, they're prodigies at things.
Right.
You had parts where Keith was listening to human biology.
Oh yeah, he's got the podcast. Yeah.
Exactly, which comes into play a little bit with else, with the girl. Mm-hmm. But it could also I'm thinking of a scene like in Olympus Has Fallen, where Jared Butler tortures the guy to get the information. When what if Keith, who's this unassuming IKEA manager, just from watching all of this information and being autistic, can put together exactly how to like torture a person for information?
And
Just be like,
reassembles
and he's,
IKEA furniture into some sort of torture
yeah.
rack.
Or he's just, or the way you're setting, like he describes it, like, as he's got the guy tied up, and he's like, when you put together a piece of furniture and you do this with the hinge, it bends perfectly. But if you do it wrong, the hinge bends wrong and it breaks, and then he breaks like an elbow or something. He's
Or he
like,
does something with an
much
Allen
like the
key.
human,
Yeah,
like the human body. So he's like, it's everything is put together the way it needs to be to function, and you just like have him go off in a perfect like, now I will be willing to put you together properly if you tell me this. Like something. And because Keith is the guy, man, he's the one who's perfect for it. Like I know. I mean, I don't want to. I know that you did some Patreon voting. We'll discuss that too later.
Yeah.
But for me, and I think you may be thinking the same. I see a much more interesting character that should be getting the screen time, and I was actually getting annoyed when I was going back to Barry and Lisa. I just didn't like it, and I wanted it to be gone.
I was in the same part, and I was also constantly forgetting like where their positions character-wise on their arc was when we went back to them. It's like, okay, we're back to them. What are they doing? Well, they're running. All right, are they addressing anything regarding their excuse me relationship? No, we're just there as like a break in the action. And the other part too is like it's not an action-heavy part with regards to like Keith and the group. They are very much on the receiving end of this part. They get captured. They get not really tortured, but they get moved around. But one of the things I actually kind of really enjoyed with this script is that it's one gang that is somehow disabled some of the security, which is piquing Keith's interest because it shouldn't work the way that it worked. Like he's confused by that. And then while they're trying to find, I guess the goods that they have somehow snuck in and hid in the IKEA, a third party has come in. The people that claim to be the real owners of the Jasmine necklace come in. So now we have these two rival gangs using IKEA as their front
Did you
line.
enjoy when a guy was referred to as a Canuck in the script?
Yes, the Canuck and the Liberal. They were funny characters.
The Canuck and the Lib. Yeah. You know what? Now wouldn't it have been more fun, not to keep getting sidetracked? You make Keith the lead, and you then turn it into an almost Home Alone, where because of his knowledge of the furniture in the store, he makes it a death trap for the thugs.
See, from the logline alone, I was expecting something of like either Home Alone or Die Hard. And we got a bit more Die Hard and no Home Alone. And I'm thinking like the potential is there because IKEA is build your own furniture, and one of the things of IKEA is that they mass produce all their parts, and they just have various different orientations to them to create different pieces of furniture. Like they're not all interchangeable, but a lot of stuff is very much the same, very much identical. You can actually take 3 different bookshelves and turn them into this huge wall console unit if you so choose, because that's how IKEA works. That's how they're able to keep their costs low and their assemblies, reliable.
I just picture like the like Hans or the Crews finding one of their henchmen in some kind of piece of furniture.
Yeah, caged somehow.
Just like, and then just like over the loudspeaker, you've been Poragod or whatever name it is, like, go to this place, you'll find someone, and like completely emotionless.
Follow the yellow arrows to the kitchen section, and you will find.
Exactly. He's like, if you come to the kitchen section, you'll see a new addition. It's that. I mean, I always think that, like, what was the one with the was it Lights Out or not Lights Out? Like where it was Stephen M. like as the blind guy, and when they break into his house, he flips the script on him.
Oh yeah. Gosh. Yes, no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's basically like home field advantage type of thing.
I really like the idea. Like, this is the kind of movie like where it's unexpectedly flip the script. You take the unassuming guy like Mr. Nobody, or any of those movies hit really well because people like the script being flipped with the unassuming person, like
Stepping up, yeah.
taking up law-abiding citizen with Jared Butler. You know, like
Hmm.
you get stuff like this. This is something where this guy has intimate knowledge of IKEA, and you do that like maybe, and you keep Saul around as a character to be completely like weirded out. Like, what are you like? Who are you? Like, where he's basically the self-insert for the audience, like commenting about how Keith is nonchalantly taking out hardened criminals, international terrorists, like it's nothing, using IKEA furniture with an, like all he's walking around with is an Allen wrench. Like
Yeah,
you
he's
said.
just an
Like,
Allen wrench. He's just
like
reassembling stuff in different orientations, creating death traps for these guys.
yeah,
It's like, what happens?
like
They're
like
trespassing in my store.
a guy gets Murphy bedded, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he's like he was like European apartments are very tiny. I need to save space. Like,
Need to
so,
save
like whatever.
space. Yeah.
So, and like the idea of like all he's doing is like, and just make Saul the audience commentary, like, you're doing this with an Allen wrench, MFer. Who are you? Like, and he just like, I'm the store manager.
I'm the
This is,
store manager.
he's
We have
like,
the right to
and
refuse
this
service
have
to any customer for whatever reason.
he was like, it is the duty of a store manager to understand all configurations of the IKEA furniture.
Yes, and all the products, all the SKUs, all those types of things. I mean, I will say this. Yeah, to your point, Keith should be the main character of this screenplay. I mean, we're talking more about him with way more vigor than we are with, obviously Lisa and Barry, and I think to that point, like, I think the concept is really strong of, hey, let's use IKEA as a setting for essentially a mob war between two rival factions, and the store manager is caught in the middle. And the plot between the two rival gangs, it's a very simple, easy to follow plot. It's basically, the Swedish gang has stolen a necklace from the Chinese gang that wants it back, and they've convened at the IKEA because the Chinese gang has figured out that's where it's planted. And there's a subplot with like an employee mole at IKEA, which I thought was kind of funny. And turns out that we do have this, like, the characters get captured by each party back and forth, and there's supposed to be a trade. And some points they think Saul is like on the other side as a gang member on the other side because he happens to be Asian as well. But then the Asians capture him and they think that he's with the other side, but the other side is all Swedes. So he's like, why would he I mean, there's a comedic beat there where he's like, I'm not the Swedish people. Obviously, I wouldn't be with them, and that the Chinese gang member just doesn't care to even entertain the idea that there wouldn't be a double cross. And this comes way before the climax. But one of the twists is that Aquila is actually the mole, but she's not a mole for either criminal enterprise. She's a mole for Wayfair, which is a rival furniture dealer, and she's been she worked her way into the company specifically to try and take down IKEA from the inside, which I'm like, that's an even funny. I wish I got more of that plot.
Corporate espionage is always funny.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think that was a good fun gag. I like a lot of elements that are here, and some of it's written very well.
Oh yeah,
and
like that,
especially
it
for the
pictures.
setup and delivery, and the descriptions, and it just comes back to Barry and Lisa just killing it for me and needing to be gone. So,
I mean, I think if you
even
were to
Saul
cut them
has,
out,
like you said, those good.
if
good
you
elements.
just cut them out in general, you'd have a 60-page script, which gives you 30 pages to beef up a little bit of Hans, of Keith, of Saul. One of the other
30 pages is plenty to work in some really cool IKEA manager death trap scenes.
yes,
That's
or
that's-
what happens if he's able to change all the arrows so that he's able to get the guys to go in circles, and then they realize, we're lost in the IKEA.
I mean, it's such a relatable thing too. Like, the average person who's gone to an IKEA knows about getting lost in it.
Yes.
And the idea, like, if you're a manager, if he's especially like if he's with Saul or if he's dragging around Elsa and she's like, "What are we stopping to do?" He's like, "If I flip this arrow, they won't notice, but in 3 turns, they'll be right back where they started."
Yes, all I have to do is flip this one arrow, and they'll be back where they started.
Yeah.
um,
It's like, because he's got home field, man. This is what and that's what audiences want to see. You want to see Kevin McAllister on roll on that map and defending his house. So
yes.
this is I mean, and people are okay with it when it's to like he's a criminal. We've seen him kill people with his frog.
Yeah, he's the bad guy. Like,
yeah,
and yeah, let's get into a little bit of the other character dynamics. So, so Elsa, the who is introduced kind of as the possible love interest to Keith, in addition to the competition with Saul,
was
she's
so much better with the introduction too, because she's working at IKEA with Keith.
yep,
She's also a very, very
alluring
uniform,
woman.
like
Yeah.
very European, like matter of fact business, like almost German, like even though she's Swedish or whatever.
Yeah.
Where she's just like, I will move this with the I will move the pallet as you requested, and then Keith's like, that is great, thank you for being efficient, and she's giving him romantic eyes as she's doing it, which is a great way to do it. You show, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing that they have similar mindsets and shared interest in efficiency, and then you find out that she was actually also an infiltrator into IKEA, because apparently IKEA is super easy to infiltrate.
Not only are they super easy to infiltrate, there's this running gag that IKEA is unwittingly participating in storing stolen goods internationally, because these various entities have just had their loyal lieutenants or what have you apply for jobs at IKEA, get security access, and then use their vast in-house storage locations to hide their contraband, which is hysterical. and it breaks, and when Keith finds out about this, it breaks his heart, because he's like, no, this is my oasis of happiness. This can't be a place where contraband is being stored. We have to stop this, but he can't stop it.
I did like, yeah, Elsa has a line where she's like, no, IKEA is actually very easy to infiltrate. See, we did.
Yeah.
Like when he's being shocked that there's more infiltration. Like,
because he has the idea, he's of the mindset that Keith is of the mindset that people that work at IKEA are are well vetted and screened and are the best people ever because they chose to work for IKEA, and that is shattered by everything that happens in this script. However, Elsa ends up becoming an ally, because not only she's trying to she has a disagreement with her father, but she also likes Keith, and she also doesn't like the bloodshed that comes with the life that she has been grown up in,
and she also specifically disagreed with his choice to steal this necklace.
Right, she did not want her father to take this necklace, but he did it to show as a point of power and ego, and she's like, this is now all brought on because of him. And so you have this father-daughter conflict, which that relationship way better developed and less pages to do so than Lisa and Barry. Just like, yeah,
like when they're going up going up the ladder?
Yes.
And she's arguing like, I won't go up without them.
We're not leaving them behind. I mean, and she gets shot and she digs out the bullet herself because she's this tough as nails girl, but she's not. She doesn't get full girl boss in this script, which is nice. But I mean, she's bleeding out and she is going to die. Like, that's the other part too. Like, she does a couple of interesting parts. Like, she subdues this one guy very cleverly with a neck hold from behind, and it's really just like an endurance test. Like, as long as she keeps holding on to his neck, cutting off his air, he can't really do much at that point. And it's plotted out in a fairly believable way, as opposed to, like, where you would see somewhere else where she would just come up and punch him in the throat once and he'd be out or something. So yeah, we end up having Elsa's kind of switched sides to a degree to help the groups. we find out that Aquila is coming there after hours. We don't know exactly why. She was just wandering the parking lot, and one of the gang members capture her, and then her secret is exposed, which is, funny, but I feel like a little bit unnecessary. Kind of like it is a red herring of sorts. And then you've got a showdown between the Chinese gang and the Swedish gang. And what were your thoughts on the subplot with Saul when he gets captured by the Chinese people, and he makes up that story about the keys?
I didn't mind it. Like, I mean, that whole thing, that was the deep fryer segment, right?
Yeah, the deep fryer.
Yeah.
God, let's talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I always, so I'm very entertained with new and unique cinematic ways to take people out. And, Final Destination comes to mind, or, as you can tell from when I just went off about Home Alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I did enjoy, like, the idea of the segment of using, and because it's IKEA, they have a full kitchen, right? Again, you're using the environment in a way that is new and different. Like, that's what I mean, if you're play with your environment, everybody who's been to IKEA knows they sell stuff in a cafeteria, they have a full restaurant kind of setup.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how would make use of it? I liked making use of it. I thought Saul trying to kind of get through that whole part was actually, again, Saul's a more interesting character in those moments than we had from our other leads. So
because I will say,
I liked that. Yeah, that whole thing, and then a poor tattooed guy.
So tattooed guy, he gets tattoos for every time he's been tortured. And so I thought that was a pretty memorable gimmick. And then he's constantly antagonizing the Chinese, saying that they're cowards and not able to actually properly torture them. So they throw him and Saul into the freezer for a bit. And then we get this thing from one of the Chinese gang members who talks about how the body doesn't handle sudden temperature change so well. And they basically turn on the deep fryer, and they take tattooed guy out, and he's scoffing at the torture levels, and then they just dip his feet into the deep fryer after they've been cold for however long, and he screams and then passes out, but then he calls them like wimps doing so, because he finds these forms of torture. He survived them all, so he figures he's going to survive this. And I'm like, that's a pretty good character trait to have. It comes in a little late, but it is a nice twist because it does make an interesting dynamic, because now Saul is terrified and he doesn't know anything, so he makes up this story that they have to find a key in order to find out where the stolen goods are. And so he is wandering through IKEA trying to convince them to not torture him or do what they just did to tattooed guy. And it's an interesting subplot. But
can
then
I ask you, with the subplot, with the Saul and Keith, I didn't, that part kind of came a little too out of nowhere for me.
There's too much there's too much distance between the inciting incident of Saul's interested in Keith to the end part where that gets a little explored.
Yeah, because like where he's once he gets rescued, he just straight up pulls the kid, like a Spider-Man Mary Jane style kiss, right?
Yeah,
and it's just like I mean, I feel like there should have been
there's no tension or no build up to it.
Yeah, and Keith there was nothing in what Keith did that should have indicated he was reciprocal yet, and it's, I don't know. It goes a certain direction, and that's where they were going with it as a script. So I feel like that was the momentum of where he wanted to end being shown in the script rather than what was happening organically. Maybe if we cut out Lisa and Barry, give him 30 more pages of room to maybe add a little more elements into it, that would play better. There just wasn't enough setup for that to pay off proper for me.
No, it kind of felt, it didn't necessarily feel forced. It felt more it just felt out of place. It's because, again, it's because there is a setup that Saul likes Keith. but Keith does not reciprocate anything back. And that's also to a degree repeated between Keith and Elsa. So we kind of see like, oh yeah, Keith, when it comes to emotions, it's like communicating with a wall. It's all about the efficiency and just getting to the point. But the fact of the matter is that between those two scenes, like between the time that Saul gets kidnapped and the time that he then reunites with Keith, they're so far apart that there's actually like there's no reason for there to be any tension for that to be broken with such a kiss, right? So he's missing that dynamic. Like we have to keep them together, keep them more together, and push and tease at this type of relationship so that it can have that cathartic moment. Because right now it just feels very much out of nowhere, and you know what? It possibly we get distracted from those moments because we keep going back to Lisa and Barry and their arrested state of their relationship. Because I'm just quickly like skimming through the script again. I'm trying to remember what they were doing aside from being kidnapped while all this stuff is going on, with a couple of exchanges of gunfire between the two gangs, and then these guys just trying to get from one point to another to try and get to the exits, and then finding out that all the exit doors are locked and that they can't be opened even with Keith's access. So yeah, there's two stories happening here that not oddly enough on paper are not working, where in concept they should work, and it just comes down to the execution. There's way more passion with the criminal gangs, with Keith, with Elsa, than there is with Barry and Lisa, and Saul is kind of like in the middle of that. Like there's something there, but it's not as well invested in compared to everything else.
Yeah, Saul's because Saul has, again, Hollywood
For Mannequin, yeah.
Yeah, he separated himself from the group early on, and then got caught up in the dynamics between the two rival gangs. So he wasn't with our core, I guess, heroes fighting against the bad guys. He was behind enemy lines, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you wanted to play with it as a concept, it does set up some good like moments, like where we get to see Tattooed Guy with his torture thing, because Saul's the reason we cut back to those scenes. I think, like you just kind of laid out, Saul's character is kind of the victim of the Barry and Lisa time.
He is that, but he just kind of made me realize something that I should have picked up while reading the script, but it came to me right now. So he's Hollywood from Mannequin in the position of Chunks in Goonies.
Oh yeah, Chunks in Goonies is perfect as a comparison. Like, cause he's our guy that we cut to for the whatever the criminals were.
The criminals that are like following up. Like they have no idea. Like they just busted their son out of jail. They have in the Goonies. They have no idea that there's this treasure or anything. But then Chunk spills the beans, and then that's how they follow the kids to the treasure. In this case here, it's a similar thing. Like he except Saul doesn't know about the necklace or any of the details. He's just kind of taking him on a wild goose chase, really just to buy himself time away from torture and murder, but it's most likely going to happen anyways. But that's kind of like the dynamic here that I'm kind of seeing. And the other part too is like Saul manages. So yeah, we skipped over this because it was kind of boring, but it does make you probably wonder. You guys out there listening probably wonder, well, why don't they just call the police on their cell phones? Well, as part of the security measures that Keith insisted before doing this whole sleepover thing is to lock away the phones so that they don't interfere and that
I really didn't.
No evidence.
I had no problem with that either.
Neither. I didn't have a problem with it either. But it's like it was a boring way to do it. It was just
it was a boring way to do it. But it still fit Keith's personality as they had laid it out. That he was the one worried about the consequences of getting caught. He's methodical, so he would think, I'll just make them leave their phones because that way no one's going to be posting with geolocation
or any photos of IKEA after
there's
hours.
There's no photos.
To compromise the business. Yeah.
and I know because when I used to go into screenings for movies before they came out, AMC would make you do that. This was early on. I mean, this was the early 2000s, but I remember when I went into Revenge of the Sith
Hmm.
for the screening. It was the critic screening a couple months before the movie came out. Like there was a Lucasfilm representative, and we had to like, and this is would have been right, what, about 2003.
Hmm.
So you had to still turn in your, like, even though they were just regular cell phones, your flip phones, because they didn't want photos getting out. They didn't want anything getting out of the movie. Um, so yeah, this is a smart trait from Keith. Like it was a little boring, and yeah, like you said, but it at least, again, this is one of the things that's a strength for the writer. He does set up organically the reasons why events happen
In the way that they happen.
very
Yeah.
well
Oh
in a
God,
way
yeah.
that because not having the phones does, and justify, because it's 2025. There's not going to be pay phones anymore.
Yep.
If
And
this was
landlines
like
are very rare too. So
yeah, if this was the night, like, especially like, you're, as a business now, you're using with IP phones. You're not even
yep.
using copper lines, hardwire lines as they're called anymore. You're not using, like you said, landlines. So if whoever's doing this just cuts the internet service to the building, there's no phones out from anywhere in there anyway. No internet, no, so you can't use the computer to do it. You can't use Wi-Fi to do it. You can't use the phones that are in the IKEA to do it, and your cell phones are locked up.
Not only that, IKEAs are traditionally hard concrete buildings, so even if you try to have a signal inside with your phone, it's difficult because they're concrete ceilings, and that's one of the things that kind of comes into effect here because Saul hands over his personal phone, but he keeps his work phone, which is an iPhone, and he's trying to stream on Instagram that he's in the IKEA, and the signal is terrible because, and I remember this a few times. If you go into IKEAs that are like they're built IKEAs, they're not renting space from like an establishing building, which there are a few of those out there, but they're actually like a fully independently constructed IKEA. Cell phone signals in there are weak. Whether that's Wi and this internal Wi-Fi or internal relays that that IKEA has for internet connection that your phone can connect to, but with the security system, the way that they set it up is that they've shut everything down, so it's all automated, so that nothing can come in. You now have Saul trying to stream some of the stuff in the IKEA to his followers, and the signal's bad, and it ends up conking out, and he doesn't even know if anything went out or not. And what's kind of funny is that yeah, the setups are there and the payoffs are there, and it makes me keep wondering. Like, I don't know. I think this guy did work at IKEA for a while because his organization of the parts at play, they fit together. Just some of the parts, even though it fits together, it sticks out and doesn't actually, create the most beautiful image, and that really just goes into Barry and Lisa. Like if I were to compare this to an IKEA project, they're an extra bag of pieces that don't belong in the cabinet I'm putting together. Like just accidentally put in there. Like someone accidentally put in an extra bag of hardware. And you're like, wait, I actually built this to the instructions as they are, and I still have pieces left over. And you're double checking. You're like, well, no, everything's accounted for. So I guess someone at the warehouse accidentally put this extra bag in the box that didn't need to go there. Like, and that's how I think it is. It's like they're spare parts that serve no function if other pieces were missing. Because if you were to take out, say, Saul, you couldn't make up for that with Barry or Lisa. It just wouldn't work.
Mm.
So it's interesting mechanics here in this screenplay. So
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot going for it. It reads smooth, reads well.
mhm.
There's setup, and like you just went through pretty well. The set-offs and payoffs are solid. It's one element.
Yeah,
One element of the story just doesn't work, and that happens. It doesn't make you a bad writer.
no,
It doesn't mean that your script idea is bad. There's one element that isn't working as it is on the page. Now, you could I think it's going to take a lot more effort to try to like finagle that bagel into working with Lisa and Barry. than it would to cut them out and kind of rework things around the characters you have.
I
So,
agree. Yeah. You know what? I'll put it to you this way. Everything that works about this script is directly connected to IKEA itself and why people are there. And the things that don't work about the script are the stuff that doesn't need IKEA in order for that story to be told. And that's basically it. I would say cut out the aspect that's not dependent on IKEA, because again, I've been having fun with this conversation. We're almost hitting the 2-hour mark, so I think we could probably like get to the wrap ups of this. Even though there's you know what? I don't want to spoil some of the. There's a couple of interesting dynamics here. There's a butt gag in there that I want to tease but not spoil, because I actually would encourage people listening to the show, seek out the script or reach out to me. I'll get you the script and read it over, because you will see two thoughts at odds with each other. One set of thoughts IKEA related that are really well done, and then the other stuff it's there and it's at best serviceable, but it's not. It detracts from what is the most interesting aspect of this concept. So with that being said, little Chad, what would you give this on the merits of this script alone? How would you rate it? Would you give this a pass and say, you know, not interested, or a green light and let's go into development?
see, this one is interesting because part of me likes enough of it that if I was a producer and felt like I could, how do I put this, be bossy, I might green light it and then kind of bully the writer into like making the changes I want. Just because I think there's enough to work with to get a really solid movie out of it. But if I'm just going by the script, it is the Barry and Lisa stuff makes it a pass for me, because it drags the story down enough that I just wouldn't want to do it.
All right, so then, okay, so
it's a pass.
So it's a pass for you. I'm gonna go in the opposite direction. I would green light this because the strengths of Keith's character and that stuff makes this a story worth exploring. But we're both on the same page of like, yeah, we have to cut out Barry and Lisa. They're not working. They chew up a little
I
bit
think
too
this would be one of the situations where you buy the script, you green light it, and you can see this in Hollywood if you ever see some of the stuff where all of a sudden the director and possibly producer get a writing credit because they got your story, and then they decided to make probably more than a 40% change. If you cut out Lisa and Barry, 30-40%.
Yeah.
And then make some tweaks from there. And it depends on how willing you are to work with it, how much of your credit stays to you. Because script writing credits are always one of the most fun things to follow on the back end in Hollywood. When you start seeing like how much a writer is going to fight for keeping his like the sole credit versus sharing credit, and maybe even not wanting the full credit, maybe just a story by if a lot of stuff changed. I like following the background when some of that happens. But this would be one where I think if the writer was willing to work with me, I'd let them keep, because I like the style. I would let the writer continue to make the tweaks that I was asking for as the producer, and work with them to massage the story into a solid movie, the best movie we could make. But if he didn't want to, I would buy the script. I would say thanks for your work, and then I would be telling him that the Writers Guild is going to get notices that there's going to be a little bit of adjusting to the script credit by the time we're done.
Oh yeah, like I'll give it to Kevin Yang. Everything that he wrote with regards to IKEA and what it means for the characters connected to that, whether it's the criminals using it as a secret storage, Keith's dedication to the company, and the espionage around it. It's chef's kiss. It could have a bit more potential with regards to the gimmicks as we suggested, but that's just our suggestions. I think Kevin Yang could probably think of some other stuff to do in those extra pages to really drill it home. But I'm I'm of the moment where like the merits of the script, I understand why it's in the top 25 of last year's Blacklist. It's got a lot of potential there. It's got a lot of things done well, and the oddly enough, the principal romantic interest of subplot is its worst part, because it's not, the characters themselves are too bland for it to be fun, even though he set up Lisa as, you know, borderline psychotic, and what's terrible is that we don't get to see her repeat any of that psychosis as an adult in this situation.
But what we do get to see on the one romance that does work is Elsa and Keith. We get to see the fact that she met him as a very efficient and actually successful and capable man in managing his the IKEA.
Yes.
So she respected his abilities, and then once the shit hits the fan in the script, Keith becomes a man of action more than the others.
More than the others.
He's vaulting trays and taking out people. He's helping to stop bleeding and helps people survive.
He saves Elsa, actually. Yeah, he's the one that saves her.
He's the classic man. Like, he becomes the everyman thrust into a situation of peril and rising to the occasion, who would woo and bring over because she's a bad girl. She's on the other side. And she falls for him. She falls
for him for that, but I also think because we're introduced as Hans as a very efficient type of person, methodical, and Keith is also efficient and methodical, he's just on the right side of the track, so to speak. That's where we understand why Elsa is attracted to Keith, because he's doing it for, you know, because it's a better way to do things. Whereas Hans is doing it efficiently, but he's doing it for his own ego. Like, you take out the ego aspect, and that's what really separates Keith and Hans. And so she's like seeing, the positive traits that she likes about her father in Keith, but also the romantic aspect, because he's taking action and he's doing it he's not doing it for ego. He's not doing it for clout or for any type of reputation. He's doing it to help the people around him. And that goes into Elsa's thing of like, yeah, you shouldn't have stolen this necklace because it wasn't about the job. It was about what it means to have taken that necklace.
I mean, and there's also like, there's a deeper like kind of meta storytelling thing where you get into the fact that Keith's autism and idiosyncratic like commitment to being efficient is used for creation through IKEA, like building.
Yeah.
He's there to help people build their dreams with his actions doing that, whereas her dad, doing the same kind of mindset and skills, is destruction and theft.
Yeah, and the exact opposite.
There's something very like core and, you know, primal about destruction versus creation, the yin and the yang, like, and being attracted, like being put off by the destructive element of the father, but attracted to the creative element of Keith. I mean, it's weird how that stuff is just working on many more levels more effectively, and it's there in that script. Kevin Yang wrote these characters are written by him, and so all the romancy love elements are there, and they work better. There's a more functional, entertaining story. That's the one to focus on.
Yeah, and I think he pulled that off by the fact that he's peppering it in as opposed to making it a driving force. And because he made it a driving force for Barry and Lisa, it just does not feel like it has any engine behind it, because it's an outcome of a driving force as opposed to a motivational one, where between Keith, Elsa, and the dynamic of Hans, it's all three of their interests are what's causing the conflict, and that's also what's causing the attraction between Elsa and Keith, is the response to that conflict. And with Barry and Lisa, the conflict is ethereal, it's superficial, it doesn't really feel authentic or there. So that's it. So a pass from you, which is perfectly great. A green light for me. Over on the Patreon, for all the patrons that managed to participate, they actually voted overwhelmingly to greenlight the script. No comments yet, but guys, if you are part of the Patreon listening into this, please comment on the scripts that we read. Even if you just want to comment on the log line itself, go for it there. We'll read it live here on the show. Speaking of which, we also have some input from the live show from the Dead Man, who has super chatted $4.99. He says, "Here's to putting together the script like IKEA furniture for us." Well, thank you so much, the Dead Man. And he follows it up with one more tip, just because I like your input. Script Doctor, love you on Midnight's Edge After Dark, and Price of Reason. Again, for another $4.99. Thank you so much, Deadman, for sponsoring tonight's episode of Scripts on Saturday, Season 2. As I mentioned earlier, yes, guys, we're expanding a little bit more on the Patreon side of things for a bit more interaction. 2024 was alarmingly a busy year for me, and now 2025 is going to get even busier, but I'm going to do everything I can to try and get some more input over there. Please feel free to sign up for the Patreon. Again, it comes with a free week trial at the base tier, which gives you access to all the cool articles, all past episodes of Scripts on Saturdays, commentaries on that as well. And yeah, we're going to be going forward with more audience input and interaction. So please, if you're a participant, even if you want to just comment on the episode itself, we could probably work in a little segment where we do a little stuff from last week's show of what people thought of the script we did last week and what we're going to be reading this week. In addition, this Monday, around 6:30 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing the Scripts on Saturdays year in review of the 2023 scripts that we read. So other panelists are going to be there. Of course, Lil Chad, if he's able to make it, he is more than welcome to participate. We're going to get a bunch of the co-hosts that are available are going to be coming in together. We're going to have a nice little round table discussion about the screenplays, what we read, what we remember, and what we're looking forward to based on the log lines of this upcoming year's Blacklist pieces. With that being said, Lil Chad, where can our wonderful audience find you on the interwebs?
I like to hang out on my channel with my co-host over there, Slender Dad, which is called the Ascendant Art. We do the Ascendant Art podcast. We do a live show Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. Script's been on it before. He's, had a good time.
Oh, yeah. Love those guys.
It's kind of a good hangout. We talk about things like movies, TV. We're the end of the week, so we don't usually hit the same stuff that everybody else has by the end of the week because it's been beaten to death a lot of times. So we do try to find new ways to do fun things. We work trivia games in. We had a lot of fun on Christmas for their episode doing a tier list for Christmas movies. A lot of good debate about that. So we try to just, again, be a great hangout where people can come. Our chat's very active, so if anybody here wants to hang out there, I think you'll be welcome, and it's very interactive. So that's where I am here on YouTube.
Yeah, and it's a fun show. I especially like the trivia stuff because sometimes you guys nail it, and sometimes you have some fun answers that lead to some good jokes and good entertainment. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to the first episode of Season 2, 2025, Scripts on Saturdays. Greatly appreciated the turnout for this show. Knowing that it's niche, I was never expecting it to be as it is, so I really appreciate everyone listening to the show, everyone who does the comments and all their shares. It means the world to me. Thank you so much for that. I want to wish you all, a great 2025 as we go forward. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.